If your team has been underperforming, or if you have been just way too involved in your operations and you want to fix that, have team members that will perform way better, need way less of your intervention, and or put managers in place, this video right here is for you. If your team is anywhere from 5 people to 30 people, which is as many as I've managed myself, then this video is for you. I'm not saying that this won't apply if you have more employees than that. It's just that I myself have only managed up to 30 people. Our companies have been very, very small and boutique, and that we like to keep it that way. So I'll teach you today how I remove myself from operations and I let the whole team take over. And so these are all of the methods that I've been applying for the last few years. They will be 1, training methods I'm going to show you. 2nd, the right way to write SOPs, in my opinion. Quality control, how do we make sure that the output is actually good? Properly assessing why team members are not performing and what to do about it, which is going to be how to actually implement performance improvement plans. Then, how do we conduct check-in calls? How often do we conduct them? How to actually build culture, and how to properly reward team members based on the role, personality type, and other things like that. Recruit better talent, and etc. So tune in. I'm going to show you step by step what are all of the things that we have implemented that have helped us. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. First, of course, we have to talk about training, because everything always comes down to the training and the quality of the training that you provide as team members. If you train them very poorly, unless you're an absolute A-player team, they will not perform, right? So here are the things when it comes to training that we found to work the absolute best. Number 1, very obvious, you need buy-in. People need to understand why they're doing something in the first place. And just writing at the top of your SOP why they should be doing it is not sufficient. You need to sell people. It's the same way that you're selling customers into your company. You need to sell them why this is a good idea to work with you. And in this case, you just need to show them, hey, this is why I wanted to do this exact thing, right? And so the way that we like to do it is we always like to break down the process in front of them and show them how everything ties together and what are the consequences for things not being done the right way. So for example, let's say this was recent. We were fixing an issue with buying domains and emails in our cold email company. And what we were doing is just showing them, hey, this is everything that we have going on. These are like the steps that we are partaking in right now. And here are the things that we're having as a bottleneck. This is high risk, high friction, massive bottleneck, which for us was proxies, setting up admin panels, buying domains, right? There was a lot of friction in the process, and we had to show them, hey, we're implementing this new training and we're implementing these new methods because this right here has been a problem. This is how. When we get to the end, we're getting either accounts suspended or we're just not getting accounts on time, which means that we're not fulfilling clients on time, which means that we don't get paid. And when we don't get paid, this is what happens, right? And so people are like, oh, okay, we gotta fix this, right? Now you got their buy-in. You gotta implement this however, whatever type of problem that you have, you just got to implement however way that they will understand that this is actually a problem. Now you need to look at the type of talent that you're explaining this to as well. If you have lead listers and you're trying to explain to them how cold email works overall, you may just completely alienate them depending on the quality of this talent that you already have. So again, tune it back or tune it forward if you're noticing that your team can handle more or they cannot handle more. Okay? Now, let's get into the actual important stuff. How do you actually train someone to execute for you? Here are the things that are the most important. We have coached a lot of businesses on this, and we noticed that this is a mistake that a lot of businesses make, which is they just aren't able to convert whatever's in their mind into the mind of someone else. And so they're training a team and they're saying all of these things, and people are just not tuned in. They're just not paying attention. They just don't understand. And these coaches or these mentors, they just don't understand how to get something across and get someone to take action based on that. So let's talk about some of the things that we notice that are absolutely most important when it comes to training people. And they're going to be very simple. First, if you're coaching someone on something complex, it needs to be explained in progressive, reasonable steps, right? With a lot of buy-in. So you need to be confirming that they're understanding things as you're explaining them. And the way that we like to do it is through relatable analogies, having them sit through a mental movie, which just makes it very easy for them to see the whole picture, and progressive reasoning. So let me show you how this works in practice. I'll show you something related to cold email that you can implement to your company, whatever area that you're working on. So first, we always start with progressive reasoning, bringing someone from where they're at to where we want them to be in terms of understanding the concept we're about to present. And by the way, this doesn't have to take a lot of time. The number one concern that people have when they hear me talk about this is like, hey, how am I going to implement this in my team? I don't have the time. Well, you have to make the time, but this does not take long. Okay, so let me show you. So for example, let me talk about this. I'll give you the whole progressive reason as if we were on a training call right now. First, you're not sending cold emails just for fun. You're trying to book appointments and generate revenue. This is common ground. We know that, but we need to establish that before we get into the next step. So if that is true and we agree, now here's the next step. Metrics like open rate or click rates can tell you about curiosity or mild interest, but they don't tell you if someone actually took the critical step. Booking a call, attending a demo, or signing a contract. This is what we want to accomplish, right? But tracking open rates and click rates will not get us there. Now, ultimately, the success in outreach is measured by whether or not it drives actual qualified leads into real conversations. Now, let me explain how that works. Let's say if you're throwing a party yourself, you actually, I would assume, care a lot more about the people that show up to the party than the people that actually looked at the invitation, right? And tracking open rates, for example, is like seeing that someone glanced at your party invite on the fridge, but it doesn't guarantee that they're going to attend or not. Now, I understand that if you're trying to reverse engineer things and understand why people didn't come to your party, you might want to know the ones that received the invites, but you can track that through other ways. It doesn't need to be as to how many people opened the invite, okay? Now, here's the big picture. You want to measure progress by actions that actually move the needle forward for the business. That's why qualified booked appointments that showed up is the key metric. Now, open rates can be misleading. Some people program their emails in ways that automatically open the open rate tracking, or they just open out of curiosity, they are not interested. And so it is just inaccurate. Now, even if you don't know anything about cold email, you could kind of relate to this. Like, okay, I'll do cold email because I want people to book calls with me because I want to sell them. Therefore, what matters the most is how many people get on a call that actually want to buy what I have, not how many people open the email. They might just have opened because they were curious about it. Doesn't mean that the copy is good, that it's relevant, that is like anything, right? It just doesn't mean anything. And that's what we're trying to get across. Great. Now, let's talk about how do you become a better team coach that can implement these things right here in a better way. Here's one thing that is extremely important if you're someone that's very logical and try to explain things with a lot of reasoning and logic once again. One thing that will be a massive tipping point into how much people actually understand what you're saying is breaking down data into stories. And it's very simple. I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say that before you would say, hey, we sent 10,000 cold emails that saw a 5% reply rate. That's data, right? Now, if you put some storytelling into this, you say we ran a test. It was 10,000 emails, 5% of those replied. Why? It's because we did this differently, right? And now it's like, it's engaging. It's like, okay, you want to know what's coming, right? Now you pay attention. And the other one is like, okay, all right, some raw data, whatever, who cares? You don't even read this if you had a big report, unless you're very logical, which a lot of employees won't be until they have a lot of buy-in or they have a lot of context, something we're going to talk about later on, okay? Let's move on. Get people to engage. I'll give you another example from cold email. I often have to coach people on how and why they need to remove bad and max records from their cold email lead list. So I'll give you an example. This is exactly how I'd coach someone on this. Number one, I would ask, hey, what country are you in right now? And let's say they tell me, okay, I'm in Thailand, right? So I would say, okay, you know in Thailand, when you want to send a package from Bangkok all the way to Chiang Mai, you have to go to the post office, you have to put in a nice package, they're going to look at the box, they're going to see if they trust this, and then they're going to just stamp it and they're going to send it on their way to Chiang Mai. They're going to get someone to deliver it all the way there. Now, when you're sending emails, it's the exact same way. You want to find a domain that you want to send you, and you want to send this package to this domain that will then decide, okay, does the address on this domain match what is coming in, meaning is the email address even valid? And if so, how do I deliver there? And the way to deliver there is the post office person. It would be, in this case, an MX record, right? So on email, whenever you send an email to a domain, it will then decide who brings it there. Is it Google? Is it Microsoft? Or is it a bad MX record, a spam filter? In this case, here's how the analogy comes all together. We need to check how we're sending these emails and who is delivering it to know that they have our best intentions in mind, to know they're not going to kick our box or break it or not deliver it at all. And in cold email, we just need to remove bad MX records such as Barracuda, Spam Proof, Mimecast, etc. And now you know, okay, when I'm sending emails, it has to go through this person. I need to just make sure this person has my best intentions at heart. And therefore, I'm going to remove any person that I don't believe in. I'm not going to send my package through a carrier that I think will break it. Easy, right? And now I just showed them how. So this is how I explain, and it's very engaging. So one thing I didn't do in the video, but I do in person is I ask them questions along the way. What country are you in? Okay, have you ever tried to send a package from this city to that city? Okay, when you went to the post office, was there a person that checked your box? And you're like, yeah, yeah. And you get this buy-in. Now they're paying attention. You actually got them to listen to you. And this is what you want to do when training your team members. Now, last part of this whole thing and bringing everything together that's said so far, one of the ways I like to coach people is in the neurological way of learning. If you think about how you learn how to walk as a kid, it was very simple. Perhaps you had an adult around you that was walking around and you were sitting there as a child looking at this adult walking around. You're seeing them doing it. Next part is this adult perhaps came in and held you by your hands, put your feet on their feet and just walked with you, right? It was a with you process. And then you started walking on your own and you got feedback. You fell or you didn't fall and now you understood how to walk, okay? And I like to train our team members the exact same way. First, I do and you watch, then we do it together, then you do and I give you feedback. And that's it. That's the whole process. Sounds like a lot of time, it's actually not. I can just show you very quickly how to do it. You do it real quick in front of me and now I just check the final output and I give you feedback, good or bad, okay? All right, now that is step one, training method. Let's get into SOPs. This is where you actually remove yourself from the picture and you let instructions, pre-written instructions do the work for you. Very simple. Number one, how to write SOPs and train people at the same time. Why did I start with that? It's mainly because a lot of companies write SOPs and no one wants to read. They absolutely suck. And the reason they suck is because they're just too long, they're just too complex, they're just boring, and like it's just not a thing that they want to engage in. And so when you're writing SOPs, I recommend that you write them the way that you speak. And so the way I write all of the SOPs in our companies is very simple. I have a training call, doing everything I talked about up here, and then I'm recording it with Fathom, which is a note-taker app. You can just look it up on Google. And then I have GPT with the right prompt, turn that into an SOP. To show you that this is real, look at my GPT account. This is an example of a prompt that I ran. I did an SOP written from the video transcript I'll provide below on how to use pandamatch.io, which by the way, if you need more domains for your code email campaigns, check them out. Next, to find more common domains, to then ICP check, do this with our automation, using the previous SOP you wrote. The guide should be clear, professional, easy to follow, even for someone new to the process. And then voila, here is the whole thing. And the output is very simple. It's gonna be the SOP itself, right? Exactly how it should be. Now note that this SOP is very straightforward. Method one, do this, create a search, click here, enter this, go there, do this, do that. It's very like, it's shooting, right? It's like, it's not like you're bursting a lot of bullets at once. It's like one bullet at a time, one bullet at a time, one bullet at a time. Just let them absorb the hits, right? As if you were fighting, like you just don't want to just throw all of your punches all at once and just try to overwhelm them unless you're fighting a beginner. You do that against a pro, they're gonna break ankle and break your jaw. So what you want to actually do is just like, it's one at a time, properly calculate, right? And so this is what you're doing in an SOP. Always remember that. Now, real example of an SOP, I'm gonna show you this one. So this is a real SOP that we have, and it's broken down in a lot of step-by-steps, a lot of bullets, right? This is how to set up a domain, for example. These are all of the steps, then you open the toggle, and then it's one step at a time. First you do this, here's what's important to know, here's what you need to do. And it goes very minute. In this case, it's broken down to people that wouldn't have too much context on cold email, so I'm breaking down even how to download a browser. So go to here, select this, click download, then open the file, do this, do that. Now note, this is so detailed. I myself would not be able to sit down and write all of this. I would just jump off a bridge, too much work. So that's why I use GPT to do it for me based on a code that I have recorded. This is the final output, right? And so, as you can see, it is very step by step by step by step. And this is what you want. And you accomplish that with this prompt. Now, mind you that I have trained an AI to do this for me. So for example, these are the instructions I gave my AI. You can pause the video, you can copy all of this out if you want to. Take a screenshot, ask GPT to recreate it for you, okay? So I trained this AI on how I like to write my SOPs. I gave it an example of an SOP, and now voila, I have a very good SOP writing system that takes my calls and turn them into an SOP. Recommend you do the same. Now, next, don't dump things on people without their buy-in. We already talked about it. Extremely important with SOPs as well. Don't just dump an SOP on them. You gotta get their buy-in and explain why the SOP is actually good to be followed. Now, next, we already talked about it. Level of instruction depends on the talent that will be operating it. For example, you have very high-level talent, broader instructions. You have entry-level talent, specific instructions. Here's an example. I show you this one, very specific instructions. Now, I'll take another one. Let me take this one. This is on how to use an automation in our company. I have everything broken down on everything they need to know about the SOP before they start. And then I have the instructions. Instructions are so simple. It's like, before you do this, do that. This is what it needs to look like before continuing. This is what's going to happen, and these are the limits. I don't need to go step by step by step by step. I don't need to tell them the buttons to press. I just need to give them overall instructions, right? So this is an SOP an automation that we have that checks lid lists, right? But this is how it was written. It's super simple, right? You don't need more than that. You can pause the video if you're curious to see more about this SOP. Not something I recommend you following, but anyways, in terms of following the SOP itself, because you need to have the automation to have it run. But you can understand how I've written these instructions. This is a massive successful SOP. The team that got this is crushing it in our company. So anyways, here's a pro tip. Coach team members on how to troubleshoot anything. You want to make sure that they don't come back to you for manager intervention every time they hit a bump. And so for all of our SOPs, you will notice that at the bottom of them, I'm going to have these instructions right here. How to troubleshoot anything. For example, first step, seek assistance from ChatGPT. Share this document with GPT-4o or O1. Take clear screenshots of the issue and ask GPT for guidance. Well, that already fixed all of your problems, to be very honest. But then if you can't, next thing, reload the page. Try the process again after the reload. Oh, go back a step and try again. Check all of the steps you did so far. Step back and retry. Adjust your approach. Try something different. Google the problem. If you've done all of this and you really couldn't find any way to solve this, then come to us. Now, you only get to a level of performance like this where you can give an SOP like that if your culture is right, which is what we're going to talk about next. Okay? Next pro tip. Track manager intervention. Every time someone has a question on an SOP, it needs to go on a log where you track that they needed that intervention. Because you want to make sure that you don't have more than 10% of manager intervention a week. If you're having more than 10%, your processes are just absolute crap, or your team just doesn't know how to operate them, or they don't have buy-in. And therefore, you need to check. You need to know how much manager intervention you have. How many tasks were accomplished? How many of those needed manager intervention? No matter how big your team is, you should be tracking that. Also, you should be tracking how many fuck-ups you had, right? Sorry for the bad language. You should be tracking that. Every time there is something that went wrong, it is an opportunity to learn how to make it better next time. You should be tracking that. Next pro tip. Make it a rule that team members have to comment on your SOPs. On all of our SOPs, you can see that they have a bunch of comments at the top. It's because the team is forced to be commenting on them. Hey, this part of the process is broken, and so you can improve the SOP. Extremely important. If I don't see any comments in an SOP for more than 2 weeks, I know for a fact they're not following the SOP because processes change. In our industry specifically, a lot. Next, okay, so now you know how to write SOPs. The next thing you need to know is how do you guarantee that you're gonna have the quality that you want out of these SOPs. So first, feedback that actually works. You already know what I'm gonna say. You need buy-in. You need to show consequences, right? And weekly assessments. So I'll tell you about showing consequences in a second. First, let's talk about why bi-weekly or weekly assessment. You need to be coming back and giving them feedback. If you literally just set and forget a system, well, they're gonna set and forget about that, why they should be doing it right in the first place. So you need to be giving them feedback. How do you do that? One thing that we like to do is what we call the Tuesday and Thursday madness call, which is a call where we come in with the whole team, let's say our whole department of lead generators, and we're gonna go through one by one of them. Their names would be here, but of course excluded for the video. And then we're gonna go, okay, how many leads did you produce? Now, I don't really like to have extremely specific metrics because that means that we have to very rigorously track all of this stuff. I just like to be very straightforward. So leads produced, is it a green, a yellow, or a red? Manager comes in and is like, hey, this week you just have produced a lot less and we had a lot more problems. This is a yellow. Or this week you have not done it right at all. This is a red. You haven't produced any leads. Like, what's going on? Then cleanliness of leads. Again, I'm checking that. I'm checking how qualified things are, how on time people are, and what has been their engagement. A lot of times we also check for things like attention to detail, innovation, how much they've been engaged, and all of those things. But in this specific case, these are the metrics we were tracking in 2023, actually. This is not even the most recent one, but I want to give you as an example of something simple. Ours nowadays are very specific, like how clean were all of the first names? How clean were all of the company names? How good were all of the emails? What was the bounce rate like? And so they get specific feedback, but you need to be conducting this. So we go one by one every Tuesday. We give them all feedback. They're on the call. They're all seeing if they're going red, and they're seeing how they're progressing towards the weeks, right? Extremely important. Let's come back. Now, how often should you check in? Number one thing is I would recommend checking weekly or bi-weekly, depending on the type of task and the amount of errors you're noticing. But just know this. The amount of check-in that you put in is the amount of importance that you give a task. If you're noticing that you're having a lot of issues with lead generation, well, you should be checking in more often, not less often, more often, so they know it's extremely important for the company that this is done right. You place importance in their mind by how often you check in. This is something I learned from Alex Hormozy, giving proper credit to where it's due, and it's helped a lot. We implement this a lot. Every time something is just going wrong, we add more check-ins. It's important. We put managers on calls with the team members, and they're checking in constantly, sometimes even twice a day, depending on the type of task. Okay? Next, instead of just enforcing discipline, fix the system. One example of this is ask, what part of this process allows for this mistake to happen? If an error keeps happening, change the system to prevent it instead of just telling them to check better. I'll give you an example. We had a lot of issues with lead lists that were coming across with wrong emails. The email did not match the first name. And that was a mistake that we just kept telling people, just check better, check better, check better. And it just didn't work, right? And so what we did is we create a system where they're only allowed to submit a list if they go step by step through a check. And the check is extremely restricted. So we have 2 columns available, first name, email. You have to check the boxes on all of them being done. Checked all of them. Now you're able to go to the next step. Okay, now you're checking if the domains match the emails. You check all of them. Now you go to the next step. Now, given they did spend more time on task, but our quality was pristine. It was crystal clear. It was like perfect. You could take any list and launch it immediately. You didn't have to check again. Because now the error was not due to happen. Because people were overwhelmed before. They rushed through. They were overwhelmed with big lists in front of them. Sometimes 100,000 leads right in front of them. And they didn't know how to chunk it down and actually check things. And therefore, by introducing this new system, it became very hard for them to make a mistake. And that helped a lot. I'll tell you more about this in a minute. We're going to talk about this next. But just so you know, this is extremely important. And part of this is approval points. So approval points, you can have 3 ways that we found to be very efficient of checking things. Number 1 is a form approval point. You should always have this. Second is automation approval point. You should have this if you have the time to implement it. And third, colleague or manager approval point. Form approval point is very simple. Look at this. This is our lead lister approval point. For example, we're going to ask, are all of the first names perfect? Only first letter capitalized, no space at the end, and only the name and is an actual name. BS. If not right, clients can lose up to 10,000 in deals from every lead that will not reply because their name isn't right. Put the wrong name, you don't get a reply, you lost a deal. And so we make it very clear, what do we want and what is the consequence of it being bad? And so they conform on all of these things. I'll show you more of this. We check for like overlapping, leads being valid, are they within ICP, do the emails match the names, etc. We have everything in here and we ask if they found any issues. Now, when they submit this form, it's very clear to us, like, okay, they have checked these things, and the process forces them to check everything because we needed that level of accuracy for something as important as a lead list in cold email. Next, automation approval point. Automation approval point is simple. The moment they would submit a form, we would have an automation come in with AI and check all of the first names, check all of the company names, check everything, and return all of the rows that were bad. If you're curious about how to implement a system like that, drop a comment below. I'll be happy to record another video. That's very straightforward. And last, a colleague or a manager approval point. Whenever you submit, someone else will check that. Either a colleague of yours, so you have even more peer pressure, or a manager. Now, it's important that the manager that checks this doesn't fix things, right? I'm going to give you an example on that coming up later. But that is an approval point that will increase the quality, if quality is what you're aiming for. If you're aiming for speed, if you're aiming for cost, you might be looking at different solutions here, which would be then just the automation, for example. All right. Next, extremely important, quality control. If something has a rigid deadline, always set a call on the calendar to meet with the person responsible 2 days before the deadline, 1 day before the deadline, and even sometimes at the day of the deadline. Calls serve as a forcing function mechanism. So what that means is very simple. I don't know if you ever face this, if you have a lot of calls, but I used to be on 8 hours of calls every single day with clients, team members, sales, and etc. And one thing that I noticed is that calls were a forcing function. I had to be there on time and present. So when I had a deadline with a client to present something, I had to get it done before the call, because else I'd be embarrassed on this call and I wouldn't be able to take it, right? And so the same works with your team. If they need to deliver something, they need to have a check-in call with you and they need to have things done by then, because it's going to be recorded and it's going to be a presentation. And that will force them to just get it done. So you place importance by very rough deadlines, which is a client call, for example, or a call with you, for example. We had to do this only a few times, but it was extremely effective and I strongly recommend that you do it. Okay? Next, properly assessing why team members are not performing. So number 1, setting the right expectations. And that is going to be very simple. There are 5 steps. This is also something I got from Alex Hormozy or Leila Hormozy. Don't remember which one of the two taught me this, but sharing with you. And it's very simple. You're going to define the 5 things that have to be true in order for them to be able to proceed. Who is going to do something, what they're going to do, by when does it have to get done, how does it need to get done, and what is their incentive? Do they have the motivation to do this? And so this is very simple to solve. You need a very good project management system and a very good manager. Number one, who is going to do it? Someone that needs to assign. It needs to be assigned in the tool. They need to know who does what to do, what are the exact steps to get there, when does it need to be done by, deadline, and if needed, calls set to force a deadline. And then how to do it is the SOPs, where I talked about it, the training, all of the things, all of the education that they need in order to do it, and incentive. Are they motivated to do it? Are they getting paid enough? Are they receiving enough attention for that? We're going to talk more about that in the next part of this video. Now, next one, make it nearly impossible to fail. I already told you this, but I'll give you an example. This is something, I'm not gonna try to paraphrase this properly. There was a study made that they were checking why a lot of planes were crashing, and they were thinking that it was a lot of pilot incompetency, but they were finding that a lot of the same type of planes were crashing and other planes weren't crashing as many times, even with less competent pilots. And so they realized that the reason why that specific plane that the aircraft that was constantly falling is because they put 2 handles that were critical too close to one another. So I'll give you an example. This is not what the study was, but just to make it very dramatic. Let's say one handle is to accelerate the plane and the other handle is to eject your copilot. If they're too close to one another, at some point, somehow, even with a very trained person, they're gonna just hit the eject copilot handle. And voila, you have a big mistake. So therefore, when you wanna set up systems, you need to think of that aircraft. How can you put those handles so far apart, there is no way that by mistake they're gonna hit the wrong handle? Or in our example, in the lead listers, how can we make sure that they have to go through step by step in a very focused manner and batched manner to ensure the quality, right? And so for you, again, we talked about it, you use a tool or a script to flag bad entries, so you can stop it right there and then, give instant feedback, and make sure you understand what got someone to make a mistake. Were they bored? Did they not care? Were they afraid of messing up? Were they just rushing through? Do they not fully understand why accuracy matters? So how do you solve this? Were they bored? Okay, let's talk about the type of test they were doing and how they could make it more engaging, maybe gamify it. Or just literally like make sure that the expectations are set right. This is boring and that's why I want you to do it, right? Do they not care? So how can you make them care? Incentives, right? For example, one thing that we used to do a while back is for lead listers that were above 98% accuracy, we'd give them a $5 bonus. So they were collecting bonus on every list and we're pumping out like 4 to 6 lists a day. And they were collecting all of these bonuses and they were incentivized to deliver very high quality. I know what you mentioned in the list, by the way, it's not that big of a problem in our company. It's just, it's a very easy, relatable thing for me to share on this video, okay? So thought I'd mention. But anyway, so do they not care? You fix it like that. Are they afraid of messing up? You need to have a very set standard of what you expect and a very clear way of how to get it done the way that you want it to be done. And assure them that if they follow your procedure, it will be good, okay? That's important. If not, you need to fix your procedure, fix your system first. Are they rushing through? You need to have a time set measurement. Can they spend more time on task? How do you force them to spend more time on task with a better system? In our case, it was checking column by column. How can you accomplish the same? And next one, do they not fully understand why accuracy matters? You need to show them consequences. This is what I showed you before. If they don't understand why they need to check first names, they will not. But now that they know they may be losing $10,000 of our clients and our retention by not doing it right, it becomes easier to do it right. And what we do is we enforce this. And so every time that there is an email that comes back to us, it's like, hey, I'm not the right person, you got the wrong person here. We forward it to them. Hey, look, this list had this issue. I just wanted to show you what happens. Your list was still above 98% quality. This is all great, but just want to show you what can happen. And now they pay more attention. Now they understand why accuracy matters. Next, always solve for lack of context. Don't ask why something is wrong. Ask why this person didn't have the context to do better. Is it an SOP issue? Is it understanding how the whole system comes together? Is it understanding new updates that weren't shared with them? Is it understanding these things right up here? etc. You need to figure out why they did not have context to do better and fix that. A lot of people problems are not actually people problems, they are system problems. And I say that with a lot of emphasis. If you're hiring the right talent and they're not performing and you know it's not because they are incompetent, it is a system issue and you just got to figure that out. And it's hard, but it's part of the game. If you need help breaking down a problem and you don't know how to solve it, just send it to me. I'm happy to provide a few ideas as to how I would solve it. But anyways, next, make sure to coach this person on how to get what they need from others. Coach them not to tolerate unexplained delays from others. Extremely important. A lot of times we have issues where, okay, something wasn't delivered on time, or they didn't know what to do because it was pending on someone else. And therefore, we now coach people that, hey, if you were delayed because someone else was spending something on you and you didn't check in relentlessly, you are in trouble with that person. We're both going into a performance improvement plan, something you're gonna see in a minute. So this is something extremely important. Here's a tip. We made everyone have an extra column in their Kanban to-do list with items to check in and follow up on with others. Like follow up with Felipe on X task, follow up with da-da-da on X task, right? And for the second tip, if it is a client, which can happen, for us it happens a lot actually, for difficult clients or ones that have like very slow approvals, proactively schedule short calls to walk them through decisions rather than waiting on them. So this is the same thing as here. If something has a rigid deadline, you always want to set a call on the calendar, because then it's a forced function. It has to happen at that time, right? And you want to do this with clients as well. We do it a lot. Not because our clients are bad at all, it's because they're very busy. We work with enterprise level companies and approvals can be very slow. So we forced approvals by having calls on the calendar, which they show up to. We get approved on call, walk them through all of the things that we need to walk them through, and voila, we're ready to move on. Okay? Next, how to actually implement performance improvement plans. Been talking about it a lot. First, let me tell you when you implement them. I implement them in our companies after someone has had consistent underperformance for more than 7 days. And the plan that I give them has 4 structures. Number 1, purpose, or 4 sections. First is purpose, clarifying expectations. Second, performance issue, identifying the right gaps. Third, improvement goals, measure KPIs or metrics that we're going to be looking at consistently. And action plan, what are the steps for recovery? So let me show you what this looks like. Here's an example of one that we did for a lead generation person. Again, we don't have many issues with them, just using this as an example for this call. So here's the employee information. Here's the purpose. We are doing this to address this issue, and this is critical to us because of this, right? This is critical to maintaining client satisfaction and minimizing errors that harm the company's reputation. Extremely important to us. Here are the issues. You are submitting lead lists with websites and companies that do not meet the required ICP. Second, you had lack of thorough review and verification of lead lists before submission. Third, it's resulted in client dissatisfaction complaints due to errors delivered in your lead lists. And so here's the goal. We need to ensure 95% compliance with ICP criteria. We need to reduce the number of companies off criteria to an average weekly score of 1 and below. This weekly score is this right here, right? It's like green, yellow, or red. So it needs to be a green, right? That's pretty much what we're saying in here. So it needs to be weekly score of 1, green, or above, right? And demonstrate greater ownership and accountability by thoroughly reviewing and verifying the list before submission. So here's how we give them an action plan. Here are the things that you have to do. Here is how you do this. This is how we give you resource and support. These are all of the things that are in place to help you with this. And here are the deadlines, right? It's very crystal clear. We walk them through on a call. They leave the call knowing exactly what they need to do and exactly how it's going to be measured and by when it's going to be measured. So monitoring and measurements, weekly review. Here's what we're looking for. Measure feedback. It will be provider, focusing on trends, improvements, and areas to address. We're going to also congratulate them on everything they do right. And of course, what is the consequence of not doing this right? This is a performance improvement plan. It is very simple. You can use ChatGPT to copy this document, implement it for you. It's very simple, right? And now it's that clear what we're expecting and how they can accomplish that. And we're going to reward them along the way. I'll tell you more about rewarding team members in a second. But this is the overall structure of how we get someone to improve when they're underperforming. Next, showing consequence. We talked about this one already. Important, please, by no means, fix things for someone else. You do not want to be that mom that picks up the kid's socks that were thrown all around the house. Because when you pick up the socks, you're teaching the kid that it's okay to leave them out there. Because what it's going to do, I'm going to skip a few steps here. I'm going to tell you about, where is this? I'm going to tell you about the 4 basic human needs. The 4 basic human needs to get anyone to feel good about where they are situated is, number 1, being heard in their essence, just being listened to. Like, if you think about, you tend to like people that listen to you very deeply. They pay attention to what you say. You feel rewarded by being heard. You also want to be recognized, noticed, and loved by the people you have around. You want to make sure that they're noticing all of the extra effort that you're putting in, all of the extra good stuff that you're doing. You don't want it to go unnoticed. You don't want it to just get by. You want to have the right to make an honest mistake. You don't want to just be punished left, right, and center. Maybe you were overwhelmed, and that's why the mistake happened. And now everyone is just like destroying you. Well, you're not going to feel like you belong in a group. It feels wrong to be there because they're not understanding how much more effort you put in. And lastly, you want to feel like you belong. You want to feel like these are your actual peers. And right, so this is extremely important when it comes to you feeling like you're part of some group, right? And specifically in a company. And these 4 things have to be done if you want your team to be performing well, and also because they should be your friends at this point, right? You should like the team that you work with, and this will naturally, organically happen, if so. But let me tie this back into what I was trying to teach you here. You need to not be the mom that picks up the kid's socks, because when you're the mom that picks up the kid's socks, you're pretty much showing them that you're going to give them attention now, because now you're going to complain about them not doing it right. You're going to make them feel like they belong in the house because you're going to give them a plan. Hey, next time you need to put this in the basket. And they're going to feel heard in the essence because they're going to explain to you why they didn't do it. And you're just literally rewarding them for not doing it again because you picked up the socks. So you see how this is coming together, right? If you need, just please rewatch this part. It's extremely important. So you don't want to fix things for your team because now you're rewarding them for not doing it right. You want to make sure that you go back and like, hey, fix this, and then we talk. So you give them attention after they've done it right. Then you hear them in their essence as to why it happened. Then you make them feel like they belong. Hey, dude, we understand why it happened. It's fine. Let's just fix it next time and not do it again. And now you just literally hit all of the 4 basic human needs. And they feel like they belong again. They feel good about doing it right. Okay? Hope that makes sense to you. Next, fix one thing at a time. If you try to fix all of the fires at once, well, you're just going to end up firing yourself off this business. You're not going to fix everything properly. Problems just like compound, etc. So we like to forcefully fix one issue at a time. And we like to do it during underperforming periods with proper trade-offs. So here's an example of our decision-making chart. This is for lead lists. We had a manager that was taking a lot of time fixing lead lists, and so we defined this chart for him, which was, how long does it take? More than 2 hours? Assess the impact. Is it high? Delegate. Is it low? Don't do this lead list yourself. Don't fix it. Then, and by the way, this is because we fired a bunch of lead listers at the time, and he had to step in on lead lists, and he was spending a lot of time. So that's why we created this chart. Next, are we late on launches or volume for clients? Then assess, is this lead list critical? So then prioritize and assign. Is it not critical? Deprioritize. Do it later. Then how much impact does it have on total client volume? Does it have a very high impact? Are we going to get closer to our goal? Prioritize it. Does it have low impact? It's going to be like 500 leads? Well, don't even care about it. Don't do it. Just disconvince the client that they need this. Then, does it align with what's needed for the campaign goals? Does it align? Keep. Is it misaligned? Was like a one-off that the client wanted? Well, drop the task. Do you have the bandwidth right now? Yes. Assign. No. Outsource or drop. Cost benefit analysis. Is it high ROI? Prioritize. Low. Drop it. Repeatability. Can you automate this? No? Okay. Then consider doing it. And opportunity cost. Is there something else that you could be doing that has a higher ROI? Do that. Is this very high cost? Drop it. Right? Okay. So you need to implement these. You can use GPT to help you create these as well, FYI. Next, I already told you, don't fix everything at once, one thing at a time, and understand how you should be fixing it based on impact. Here's a bonus tip. In periods of overwhelm, if you're an agency like we have a few, make sure you're communicating with all of the clients and solve one client at a time forcefully with the whole team. Everything moves all at once, like a game of chess. You want all of the pawns to be acting in your favor and all of the pieces behind just favoring their position by every move that you make. And you want to do the same in business. You want to use the whole team forcefully, not just attack things yourself. Everyone needs to be engaged. Everyone is doing something. Everything is pushing forward. Okay? Next, how do you conduct check-in calls? You need to lead. Ask good questions. Right? Don't just come in and say, hey, this week we had this issue. I think we should be fixing it this way and that way. Ask them, hey, this week we had this issue. What do you think about this? How are you feeling about how that's going on? Hear them. Again, hearing people in their essence. Then, okay, how do you feel about like fixing this? Okay, that's interesting. Have you considered X? Okay, why not? Okay, what about this other thing? Okay, what if this happens in your plan? Right? You're leading them with very good questions. It's still their idea. You're just leading them to the right answers. Or if you don't have the answer, you're leading them to help you find the answer. Don't answer it for them and conduct them in the right direction. This is all by asking the right questions. That's how you lead. You lead not by saying, you do this, you do that, this is how it gets fixed, that's how it gets fixed. Because now they're not feeling heard and they are in the front lines. They need to be heard. Okay? And lastly, track the right things. We already talked about it. Make sure on these calls You're tracking the things that actually matter to your business and the things that you actually need to improve. Next, we're getting towards the end here. How to actually build culture. First, explain the trade-offs. You always need to show people that the chart of like quality, price, and speed. If you toggle two on, one automatically goes off. If you have quality and price, well, it's not fast. If you have quality and speed, well, it's not cheap. Well, if you have speed and price, well, it's not high quality, right? And so you need to show the team, hey, right now we're focused on quality and speed. Doesn't matter if it's expensive. Go buy the tools. It's fine. Then later on, we're gonna focus on price and quality. And we know that we're gonna reduce speed, and we're gonna keep on doing this trade-off. And it's important that the team understands where your mind is at. And if you haven't considered this, well, then you cannot be expecting of your team to be doing quality, price, and speed all at once for a bunch of clients. It's gonna break. So one at a time. Okay? Next, extremely important, big part of our culture. If it wasn't updated in the tracking system, it wasn't done. If I come into our Airtable project manager and I see that something wasn't done, I'm checking in. I don't care if I saw on Slack that it was done. If it wasn't updated on Airtable, it was not done. And I'm only tracking Airtable. That's how you make sure the systems are actually followed through. A lot of companies have very messy CRMs, for example, where they track their leads because they don't enforce that. They're like, oh, you had a call with the prospect? All right, it's fine. No, it wasn't tracked on Airtable. I didn't see that you had this call. So it wasn't done. Why did you not have the call? And like, well, I had a call, but well, I'm not seeing it. It shows here it's not done. And you only have to do this once or twice until people realize, oh shit, I actually got to update the damn thing. And now we're in a good spot. So that's how you make sure that they actually follow the project management system, that actually things are accurate and you can actually have visibility in your business. Next, extremely important, I cannot emphasize this enough. Deadlines are real. They are deadlines, right? And so if something wasn't done on time and communicated would be done on time, it's a strike. So every time that someone hasn't done something, no matter how small, by the deadline and communicate about it, it's a strike. And 3 strikes is what leads them to being out of the company. Because on strike number 1, we usually start on a performance improvement plan. We don't do this often at all. I don't want you to feel like it's very negative. No, this doesn't happen often at all because we treat our deadlines in a very real manner. And we assess capacity based on deadlines. So we have a bunch of new clients coming in. We set their expectations right. We don't try just to overwhelm our team and have them work extra. No, we have very good communication. Hey, I have a deadline for this. If you put this extra on my calendar, I won't have time for that. So now we're all on the same page. There is nothing sneaking up on us all of a sudden. And that's done because we treat deadlines as real deadlines. Okay? Next, make sure in order to build a good culture that you build the right recruiting funnel for higher level talent. Have them start, this is an example for us, they start on lead generation with a plan to grow on the roles to management, perhaps campaign management in the future. This is something that we did to fix our lead generation problems back in the day. And so what we did then is we recruited talent that was above the task I wanted them to do, had them to go below and then grow in the company. That way we reduced a lot of the errors because our talent was getting offended by having to be checked in on something that they feel like they're above of, right? You're playing with people's egos and statuses here. If someone feels like they're a client success manager and you put them to do lead generation, they're like, hey dude, don't keep checking on me on this lead generation thing. Of course I got this done. These are the people that you don't need to send SOPs to. A lot of times they just perform because they're like, okay, this dude, I've done this my whole life. I'm way beyond this, right? So they just want to get you the part where they get you the row that they feel like it's like up their skills. So you want to go slightly below. That's just a tip. Worked really well for us. Now, what we do as well in this recruiting funnel is we always make sure we mention on-target earnings on top of base salary. We attract better people when we do that. We promote on performance. We target goals to earn more. We always are doing that. Performance improvement plans usually lead to a raise as well, just so people are rewarded for doing that. And also know that you get what you pay for, right? If you're looking for someone that has the mindset of someone that performs only very low-level tasks, well, that's what you get, low-level talent or like entry-level talent, right? And you have to train them a lot more. But if you look for someone that feels like they are beyond a role and you give them a plan on how to get to that role, now you got someone that's going to perform really well in that original task. Just a tip. So you get what you pay for. We pay extra for a lot of our roles. Actually, for all of our roles right now in our company, we pay way above market. And that is because of all of these things that I've been mentioning to you so far. Now, also part of your culture. For us, for example, my teams, always we talk about gym, how well we're sleeping, drinking coffee. We are all like coffee aficionados. And so this is our culture. We are like this fast-moving, very healthy group. And these are the things that we care about. And this is why we perform very well. And so again, you're making people feel like they're part of something they care about. And then you attract the right people for this role. I'm not saying you need to be tracking these things. This is just what we track in our company. And it works really well. Now, also make sure to tell people the culture before they apply. Alienate all of the wrong people. I always mention, hey, we focus on quality. We're gonna over-deliver. We don't care. We're gonna do the extra. We always do the extra. You'll be expected to do the extra. And if this is not something that aligns with what you believe in, don't join us. It's not the right fit. You're gonna regret doing it. And the right people that would love to have done that will not join because you join, right? And so you're hurting everyone with this. And there will be people that will be just exactly like us. They just love over-delivering. Again, they get paid. They get paid extra for that. We reward them, but we want people with the mentality of over-delivering, right? So hope that helps. Next, properly reward people based on the role and personality type. Types of rewards would be compensation. You can pay them more. You can give them bonuses on top of salary. You can give them coffee subscriptions like we do, etc. Or you can give them genuine praise. Or you could just meet their 4 basic human needs. And that is sufficient. So literally having a call just to hear them out. What's the role been like? What has life been like? What have you been up to? And genuinely listening, genuinely being interested. Because if you're not, well, what kind of talent have you been recruiting in the first place? Right? Think of that. Then recognizing people, hey dude, I noticed you work a lot this week. I noticed like you put a lot more effort on this. I know those issues are still there, those fires are still burning, but I'm seeing what you're doing, dude. That's awesome. It's good stuff. Let's talk about it. Then get a call like, hey dude, like I really appreciate you doing that extra work. This is good stuff. This is how I done it as well. Like we're on the right path, right? It's like the us versus them type of mentality. That is not forced. This is genuine. This is how you genuinely should think about it. Because if you're not, well, again, you got the wrong team, right? Next, having the right to make an honest mistake. Hey, dude, I know you worked a lot. I know you put a lot of effort into this. This was a mistake, but you're on the right path. We just got to get through this and this. We're going to get there, right? So they feel like they're part of the group still. They're not just getting like punched left, right, and center for something that they feel like wasn't in their control. And you will know that by listening to them and hearing them in their essence. And again, feeling like people, making people feel like they belong. Hey, dude, we're on this, dude. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get through this one and that one. We're gonna put in more effort this week, and this is how we're gonna get there. And next week, this is what we're doing, right? Again, always this group thinking, not like just play here and create a bunch of lone wolves that don't even want to talk to you, right? Pro tip: sounds funky, but read the 5 Love Languages. It's a very good book. And learn about how your teammates will like to be rewarded. Some people like gifts. They will like commissions rather than anything else. Some people just like time together and they just want to have more calls with you and be more involved in things and have more hands-on action. Some people will like different things. And you got to figure out what those are, right? And you got to meet them where they're at. Maybe it's something that you weren't expecting and now you know what it is and you can reward them the way they would like to be rewarded, not the way that you would like to reward them. And that makes a huge difference. Next, we love to reward people for delivering before deadline. You deliver us something 2 days before the deadline, we are noticing that. We are gonna message you. Hey dude, this was due in a few days. Awesome that you did it right now. That's the good stuff. Again, we don't do this all the time, but every once in a while we're noticing, we're paying attention to these things, and those are Airtable views that we create to make sure we're always on top of it. I recommend you doing the same. We also reward people for delivering with 98% accuracy or quality on everything, on scripts, on lead lists, on campaigns launched, on results, on submitting things, on replying to prospects, etc. Always rewarding for high competency. Now, let's close off. This is a very long video. We are 48 minutes in. Let me tell you how you summarize everything. Recruit better talent. Find people who'd be offended by having you correct them. Find people that would just be so beyond. They're just so ready. And again, you're focusing on quality, not price here. But it will compound. It will pay its dividends. Next, they should feel like they're slightly above the row and got things under control. Mention this to you this whole video. And lastly, you get what you pay for. You gotta look at what's their mentality. If they see themselves as data scrapers, for example, and you want them to be doing manager level tasks, well, you didn't get the right mindset match. And don't get this wrong, people do not outperform their mindsets ever. I know it sounds very coachy, I know it sounds very blah 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 woo woo, but it's true. People do not outperform their mentalities. You gotta understand the way that people think or coach them to think better in order to get the final results. I hope this was very valuable to you. I'll end it here. This was very long. Let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know if you want another video like this, breaking down other parts of your business or how to make fulfillment a lot better, how to track project management, etc. You let me know. I'm here for you, and I'll see you in the next one.